awakened to what life is all about. You realize that the whole of this world is set up in various stages of awakening. And when it comes to spirituality, that's basically what it is awakening or reawakening as we go through life. People are awakened at a certain level of spirituality, and they find a particular religious faith that corresponds to whatever that awakening is. It isn't that we spiritually grow. Oftentimes when I hear the term spiritual growth, I cringe, because there isn't anything to grow. We don't grow at all. We already are all that we could supposedly ever grow into. Jesus tried to emphasize this to his disciples when he said, "Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit to their stature?" In other words, we are what we are. Another time, he said, "The maid is not dead, but merely sleepeth." Most people in this lifetime spiritually are asleep. They're only in various stages of awakening. Whatever we will ever be, we already are. That was a great, great mystical truth that Jesus spoke about to those that could understand. He also alluded to the fact that I speak to them in parables, because having ears to hear, they hear not. Well, obviously they had physical ears, but obviously whatever was entering the physical ears was not connecting with what was between the 2 ears. And it's the same situation today. We have people that can hear absolute truth and not have a vaguest idea what's being said. Just like an infant, you can tell them higher truth in terms of living in this physical life, but they don't understand. And we don't punish them for not understanding. We basically realize that sooner or later they will understand to some degree the ways of the world. The same situation applies here. It applies in the idea of how much can we comprehend. When we come to anything that is secret, you can only understand it if you're ready to understand it. Now, another key element of understanding when we say the secret teachings of Christ, there was one key thing in the New Testament that's very much looked over by traditional Christianity, and that is when he said, "I speak to them not in words of men, but in words of spirit." So whatever was coming forth from the mouth of Jesus, the personage, was really being spoken by the Christ within Jesus. Now, what am I saying here? Am I isolating Christ from Jesus, the personage, from the Spirit that is called Christ? Yes and no. When the full Spirit is working within every one of us, we are then, in that moment, the Christ. We are in that moment, actually, for all intents and purposes, the manifestation of God. However, that doesn't happen 24 hours a day, every moment of every day. Whenever we have any real humanity inside of us, whenever we have any real compassion inside of us, whenever we are selfless in our actions, whenever we are thinking only of others and not ourselves, then we find those great moments where this consciousness has come through us, where in those brief moments we are more than simply physical flesh and bone, where the flesh and bone in and of itself has become then a vehicle or a channel, as it were, for the bringing forth of higher truth, a higher reality. So let's take a look at the first affirmation, which says, "I understand that there is an outer and an inner teaching of Christ, and it is up to the spiritual awareness of each soul to choose which." Now, most people will choose the outer because they are not awakened enough to have an appreciation of anything inner. You can't really teach algebra to somebody until they have learned the basics of math, of basic arithmetic, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. You're getting ahead of yourself. I mean, you put different things in front of a person, algebra, trigonometry, whatever it might be, and you tell them, "Hey, figure this out. What does all this mean?" Well, if they don't even know the basics or have an appreciation, there's no bridge between not knowing and knowing. And it is the same thing when it comes to religion, and it comes to spirituality, and it comes to whatever is being taught under the name of spirituality. And so there is an outer type of religion, and there is an inner spiritual teaching. What is that inner spiritual teaching? Is it just Christian? No. The inner spiritual teaching is within all basic religions that have any real spiritual substance to them. The same basic teaching is within the Hindu teaching, it's within Buddhism, it's within many, many different cultures. However, there is a thing that distinguishes the lifetime of Jesus and of Christ from every other great teacher that has come on this earth. And that is that it was recognized that in the Western culture, those souls incarnating into Western culture were not that awakened to be able to understand higher, deeper spiritual truth. And so it became something that Jesus' life, every act in Jesus' life, had to symbolize something that is an internal process that deals with the secret teachings. Whether it started with the birth of Christ to symbolize the birth of Christ consciousness within ourselves, whether it was symbolized by the death on the cross and the resurrection, symbolizing the death of the human consciousness and the rebirth of divine consciousness within a person, symbolized by many, many different things. This is the way that it unfolds. So we have the inner and we have the outer. Why do we have both? Because as I said a moment ago, most of the souls incarnating into Western culture, and I don't mean to put Western culture down, but most of them are more materially inclined. Those that are incarnating more into bodies that are of the Hindu bent, of Buddhism, those souls have been exposed to more abstract thought in previous lives. They come in here more awakened, and thus they can be told the truth more in a frontal situation. That is why if you pick up the Bhagavad Gita as an example, the Hindu gospel, great profound truths are right laid bare before you. If those same truths were to be taught to Western culture, they would be clothed in symbolism and in parables until such time as a person could awaken spiritually enough to be able to interpret the inner or the true or the secret meaning of these things. So again, this is not a put down on Western culture. It just happens to be, if you want real truth, that most of the people that incarnate into Western culture are more materialistic in their consciousness. They are more wanting the physical type of situation. That is not to say that others in other civilizations don't want the physical as well, or put that in a prime area of importance in their lives. So when Jesus came, the idea was, here comes a very, very high soul, indeed a Messiah soul, to be able to bring spirituality to the Western culture and Western civilization. The recognition came before the incarnation that you can only teach these people up to a certain degree. And so there's only a few people here that will be able to understand you. Those people will become the disciples. That's how few there were available. Because as we all know, there were only 12 disciples. So here you have all of these mobs of people following Jesus around, but only a dozen that could really understand or interpret. And so there became then the necessity to have two different teachings. One for the outer person, the person that simply could not understand the abstract, the subtleties, and if they even began to comprehend them, they would ridicule them. Hence the words, cast not thy pearl before the swine. And humanity, by and large, in terms of spiritual comprehension, is just about at that level. Give any type of panic situation, any type of war, any type of situation where you have chaos, and you have two different things that can happen. One is it can bring out the best in you, or it can bring out the worst in you. Both elements are present. It can bring out the primeval swampland of unawakened soul life, or it can bring out the greatest celestial type of consciousness possible. However, on a day-to-day basis, the average person in our Western culture doesn't want to comprehend. They are here for material purposes. The material life is what attracts a soul to this planet, to this lifetime. Yet, with every grouping of souls, there's always a few that are in advance. Those are the people that are supposed to make available the inner or the secret teaching to those few that are ready for it. Let's suppose, as an example, just for the sake of conversation, we have 100 souls that incarnate into our Western culture. Out of that 100 souls, maybe we might have one that might qualify to teach the others the deeper spiritual secrets of life. Then we have maybe 99 left. Now, how many of those 99 can really comprehend? First of all, I doubt if you only had 100 people to work with that you'd find a real teacher. Secondly, if you had 100 people, only 100 people to work with, I doubt you would find one student, one person that was ready to comprehend. Think about this. You can lay truth out, but unless a person is ready for it, it doesn't connect in their mind. It doesn't connect in their consciousness. I've learned this over the years. I've learned it when trying to bring truth to people. Whenever, as an example, we put in some type of large advertisement in a newspaper or a magazine, unless that particular newspaper is very, very specific to a specific audience, or the magazine is to a specific audience, it doesn't make a bit of difference. The people will look at it, they will not understand it, they will not comprehend it, they cannot identify with it, and nor can they associate with it. Hence, it doesn't exist. Having eyes to see, they see not. In other words, if I took and ran a full-page ad in the average newspaper in this country today, or in any country for that matter, and brought out the absolute truth, people would look at it, they would absolutely not register. They would not say, oh my, how profound. Oh, is that interesting? Oh my gosh, that explains everything. It would just bounce off of them. And that's the way it is. So we have the outer and we have the inner.